Imagine a family business built over decades, thriving on a single, unique recipe. Not just any recipe, but one so special, so utterly delicious, that it becomes synonymous with a brand, generating millions in revenue year after year. Now, picture that secret, the very essence of your livelihood, vanishing overnight, falling into the hands of a competitor. This isn't fiction. It's the chilling reality faced by many businesses. And today, we're uncovering one of the most compelling examples. The case of stolen recipe valued at a staggering $10 million. We'll explore how this culinary cornerstone was snatched, the immediate fallout, and why its loss triggered a legal war. The stakes couldn't have been higher, not just for the family, but for the very concept of intellectual property in the food industry. What exactly makes a recipe a legal trade secret? And how do you prove it was stolen? Our story begins with the company known for its wildly popular sauces, a staple in kitchens across the country. The founder, a culinary genius, had spent years perfecting a distinct flavor profile, a blend of spices and techniques that made their product truly unique. This wasn't just a list of ingredients. It was a carefully guarded process, known only to a select few within the company. Employees signed strict non-disclosure agreements, and access to the master recipe was heavily restricted. For years, this system worked flawlessly, protecting their competitive edge. But even the most robust security systems can have a weak point, often human. The question is, who would betray such trust, and what would motivate them to risk everything for a recipe? The breach began subtly, with whispers and suspicions. A longtime employee, privy to the recipe's intricacies, started exhibiting unusual behavior. This individual, trusted with sensitive information, began making copies of proprietary documents and emailing them to an unknown recipient. Initially, these actions went unnoticed, masked by the daily operations of a busy food production facility. However, patterns emerged, red flags that in hindsight screamed betrayal. The theft wasn't a smash and grab. It was a calculated, methodical extraction of the company's most valuable asset. The crucial question became, how did the company eventually discover this systematic theft, and what evidence did they gather to confirm their fears? The stolen recipe didn't just disappear into thin air. It landed directly in the hands of a rival company, eager to replicate the success of the original brand. This competitor, struggling to gain market share, saw an opportunity to leapfrog years of research and development. They allegedly offered the rogue employee a substantial sum and a prominent position, tempting them to hand over the coveted formula. This kind of corporate espionage is not uncommon, but rarely is it so blatant. The competitor's actions, from hiring the employee to allegedly integrating the stolen recipe into their own products, would become central to the legal battle. What steps did the original company take once they realized their secret was being used by a rival? Upon discovering the theft, the original company didn't hesitate. They immediately initiated a multi-pronged legal attack. First, they confronted the former employee, demanding the return of all proprietary information and reminding them of their non-disclosure agreement. Simultaneously, they filed a lawsuit against both the employee and the rival company. The primary claims included trade secret misappropriation under the Defend Trade Secrets Act, DTSA, and breach of contract. They sought an injunction to stop the competitor from using the recipe and substantial monetary damages. This swift legal response was critical, but proving a recipe is a trade secret in court is far more complex than it sounds. What specific criteria must be met for a recipe to qualify for such legal protection? In U.S. law, a trade secret isn't just any confidential information. For a recipe to be legally protected, it must meet 3 key criteria. First, it must derive independent economic value from not being generally known or readily ascertainable by others who can obtain economic value from its disclosure or use. Think about Coca-Cola's formula. Its value comes precisely from its secrecy. Second, The owner must have taken reasonable measures to keep it secret. This means NDAs, restricted access, password protection, and physical security. Third, it must actually be a secret, not something easily reverse-engineered or publicly available. A basic chocolate chip cookie recipe, even if it's grandma's secret, likely wouldn't qualify. The challenge for the original company was demonstrating they met all these requirements. What evidence did they present to convince the court their recipe was indeed a protected trade secret? The legal team meticulously built their case, focusing on demonstrating both the recipe's trade secret status and the blatant misappropriation. They presented evidence of the extensive security measures taken, signed NDAs, locked files, encrypted digital copies, and a clear chain of custody for all recipe-related documents. To prove misappropriation, they used digital forensics to trace the emails sent by the former employee, showing the exact proprietary files transferred. They also presented product analysis, comparing the competitor's new sauce to their own, highlighting the uncanny similarities in taste, texture, and even specific, unusual ingredients. This wasn't just a coincidence. It was a near-perfect replication. But the defense had its own arguments. How did the rival company attempt to discredit these claims and protect their new product? The defense launched a multi-pronged counterattack. They argued that the recipe wasn't truly a trade secret, claiming it was based on common ingredients and techniques widely known in the industry. They asserted that the original company's security measures were insufficient, implying negligence on their part. For instance, they might have pointed to an instance where the recipe was briefly left unattended or an NDA wasn't perfectly worded. They also tried to distance themselves from the former employee's actions, claiming they were unaware the information was stolen and that their product was developed independently. This strategy aimed to poke holes in the trade secret definition and shift blame. But proving independent development when the products are almost identical is a formidable challenge. What specific evidence did the plaintiff use to dismantle the defense's claims? The plaintiff's legal team systematically dismantled the defense's arguments. They brought in culinary experts who testified to the unique complexity of the original recipe, explaining how its specific ratios and processing methods went far beyond common knowledge. They presented internal memos and emails from the rival company, showing a timeline where immediately after hiring the former employee, they rapidly developed a product strikingly similar to the stolen recipe. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Furthermore, the plaintiff demonstrated the competitor's previous attempts to create a similar product had failed, highlighting their sudden, inexplicable success. This mountain of circumstantial and direct evidence painted a clear picture of deliberate theft and utilization. What was the financial impact of this theft, and how did the court calculate the damages? Determining the monetary value of a stolen recipe is complex. The original company sought damages based on several factors: lost profits due to the competitor's infringing product, the competitor's unjust enrichment from using the secret, and the cost of developing the recipe in the first place. Expert witnesses, including forensic accountants, testified that the recipe's value, based on its contribution to the company's overall revenue and market position, easily exceeded $10 million. This figure wasn't pulled from thin air. It was a meticulous calculation considering sales projections, market share erosion, and the intrinsic value of proprietary innovation. The court also considered the punitive aspect, aiming to deter future trade secret theft. This financial quantification was crucial. What was the ultimate verdict in this high-stakes legal battle? After weeks of intense testimony and deliberation, the court delivered its verdict. It sided overwhelmingly with the original company. The jury found that the recipe was indeed a protected trade secret, that it had been misappropriated by the former employee, and that the rival company knowingly benefited from its use. The court issued a permanent injunction, preventing the competitor from ever using the stolen recipe again. More significantly, it awarded the original company millions in damages, covering both lost profits and punitive measures. This landmark decision sent a clear message. Trade secrets, even those as seemingly simple as a recipe, are valuable assets deserving robust legal protection. What does this case teach us about safeguarding our own innovations and secrets? This case offers critical lessons for anyone with valuable intellectual property, especially in the form of trade secrets. First, protect your secrets aggressively. Implement strong NDAs, limit access, use digital security, and train your employees on confidentiality. Don't assume a handshake is enough. Second, if a theft occurs, act swiftly and decisively. Gather evidence immediately and engage legal counsel experienced in intellectual property disputes. Delay can severely weaken your case. Third, understand that even simple creations like recipes can hold immense legal and economic value if they meet the criteria for a trade secret. Finally, this case underscores the power of the Defend Trade Secrets Act, providing a federal avenue for recourse against misappropriation. Failing to protect your intellectual property can cost you millions. What's the single most important takeaway from this entire legal saga? The case of the stolen recipe worth $10 million is a stark reminder that in the competitive world of business, your intellectual property is often your most valuable asset. The law provides powerful tools to protect it, but only if you take proactive steps to keep your secret secret. This case demonstrates that whether it's a sauce, a software algorithm, or a manufacturing process, safeguarding your unique innovations is not just good business practice, it's a legal imperative. The cost of negligence can be staggering, but with diligence, you can protect your creations and your livelihood. If you found this deep dive into legal strategy and high-stakes courtroom drama insightful, please consider subscribing for more true U.S. legal cases told simply.